Welcome guys, this is your friend xnarutofanfic and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Konoha betrayed Naruto, and he returned as the Harem Emperor? Part 1. Let's start this fanfic. Betrayal. A bloodied and half-conscious Naruto stumbled through the Konoha gates carrying an equally injured shinobi over his shoulder. It had been a painful battle to retrieve the last Uchiha, but in the end, Naruto managed to overpower Sasuke's Chidori with his own Rasengan. Yes, Uchiha Sasuke, Emo King, bastard of all bastards, was back in town and ready to wreak havoc once again. That is if he wasn't unconscious at the moment, but such a trivial matter had never stopped the Uchiha bastard before, right? Didn't the great Uchiha Sasuke-sama defeat the Hunter Nin in Wave Country after falling into a coma? Didn't he manage to single-handedly defeat Gaara of the Sand, effectively stopping an entire invasion force? Yes, Uchiha Sasuke was one bad mofo, even when unconscious. In any case, just minutes after their arrival, the rest of Team 7 made their way to the struggling duo. Sakura was the first to step up. She quickly took the would-be brooding bastard and ran off to the hospital, whispering, "Sasuke-kun." Kakashi turned to the blonde and gave him an eye smile. "Go get yourself to the hospital, Naruto. I have to go check up on Sasuke now." With that, the lazy copy nin shushined away, leaving Naruto alone in the middle of the street. Naruto sighed. It was always like this. Make sure the Uchiha is safe and happy, and Naruto will be alright by himself. He slowly made his way to his apartment and collapsed onto his bed before slipping into a dreamless slumber, allowing the darkness to once again envelop his mind. At the hospital, Sakura turned to Kakashi with tears streaming down her face. "Will Sasuke-kun be alright?" Kakashi sighed. He knew that Sasuke would be in deep trouble once he woke up. Leaving Konoha as a missing nin to go over to Orochimaru was bad enough, but to attack a group of Konoha shinobi, and using an assassination jutsu on one was grounds for immediate execution. Physically, yes, but I'm more worried about the legal consequences Sasuke could face. "What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei?" Sasuke took a Rasengan to the chest, but the medical staff says that he should be back to normal in a week or so. However, he ran away to join Orochimaru, one of Konoha's greatest enemies. Pakun also says that he used the attacked Naruto with a Chidori before Naruto countered with his Rasengan. According to standard shinobi protocol, Sasuke would be forcibly removed from active duty and serve as breeding stock for future generations of Sharingan wielders. Sakura's eyes widened. She didn't go through all that suffering, waiting for her Sasuke-kun to come back, just to watch him be punished so severely. But Kakashi-sensei, is there anything we can do to save Sasuke-kun? Well, there is one way, Sakura. Sasuke, I and Naruto will likely be called upon to testify during his trial. Sasuke has many supporters on the council, so we only need to bend the truth slightly in Sasuke's favor to ensure his continuation on our team. Hopefully Naruto won't mind. He won't, since when has that baka ever been serious? So let me get this straight, we tell them everything we know and leave out parts that make Sasuke look bad, like the Chidori and the curse seal. Kakashi smiled. Things just might work out after all. Right, Sakura. Soon things will be back to normal. Meanwhile, Tsunade, Shizune and Jiraiya were leaving Whirlpool Country with identical smirks on their faces. Surprisingly enough, this wasn't because Jiraiya managed to scheme his way into either of the kunoichi's pants. The reason for their mutual satisfaction was the birth certificate that Tsunade had finally secured and was currently holding in her pouch. The trio had left Konoha to investigate Naruto's ancestry, and was not at all surprised at the results. In fact, Tsunade felt rather stupid that she hadn't noticed it before. "Makes you feel rather stupid, doesn't it, Tsunade Haim?" "Yeah, but it explains a lot, really. I can't wait to see the old farts' faces when they see this." Tsunade gleefully imagined the looks of shock on Kaharu and Homura's faces. "Maybe they'll die of a heart attack." Tsunade giggled, causing Jiraiya to look over in concern. "You okay, Tsuna?" He was cut off by the chakra-laced punch colliding with his skull. Come on, you pervert, let's hurry up and get back home. With that, the two Sanin and one assistant set out to return to Konoha, blissfully unaware of the disaster that lay ahead. The next day, Naruto was waiting at Team 7's normal training ground waiting for his teammates to show up. Patience and tranquility were not traits that were generally associated with Naruto, so after sitting around for a few minutes, he decided to get started himself. After a few light stretches and warm-ups, Naruto crossed his hands into the familiar hand seal and shouted out Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 20 clones surrounded the Jinchuriki and leapt as one towards the original. Showtime, he thought, pulling out several shuriken. Throwing the shuriken, he was pleased to see that most of them hit their mark, effectively dispelling the clones. An intrepid clone leapt forward only to be kicked in the face. The remaining clones started to cautiously circle their creator. The original Naruto charged forward, fists flailing, and managed to catch the clone in the ribs. The remaining clones ran straight at Naruto, who started to charge up a Rasengan. The clone army and the swirling maelstrom met, causing the remaining clones to poof out of existence. Hey, looks like I'm still the best Naruto after all, gonna be Hokage Datbayo. When will Kakashi-sensei and Sakura-chan come? Maybe I'll ask Sakura-chan if she wants to go eat ramen. Ramen. Oh boy, miso ramen, pork ramen, and some shrimp ramen, I can't wait. Hey, I have a coupon for a free bowl at Ichiraku's. Ramen, what the? Naruto was roused from his musings by the appearance of several Anbu who quickly flanked the Jinchuriki with drawn weapons. Uzumaki-san, your presence is requested at the council immediately. You will come at once. Naruto shrugged, maybe Tsunade was resigning and he was named immediate successor. Wait a second, Tsunade was out doing some secret Hokage stuff, so what the hell did they want? Naruto allowed himself to be shushined out of the training grounds and into the Hokage tower. I so have to learn that. Then Tem wouldn't stand a chance against me Ibeyo. Walking down the hallway, Naruto tried to strike up a conversation with the Anbu, asking them about their missions, weapons and training, but they all stayed silent. Finally, they reached a large wooden double door, which Naruto knew led to the council's chambers. He was surprised when the door opened, revealing Sakura and Kakashi with smiles on their faces. Hey, maybe we're all getting promotions from bringing back Sasuke Tem. One step closer to Hokage and all the ramen I can eat. Hey there, Sakura-chan, Kakashi-sensei. Ah, Naruto, sorry about being late, but we were summoned to the council earlier. That's alright Ibeyo, Kakashi-sensei, they called me in as well. Nay, Sakura-chan, how about we go get some ramen later today? Subduing her immediate rejection reflex, Sakura thought for a second. It couldn't hurt, and I guess I ought to do him a favor for helping save Sasuke-kun. Sakura smiled and nodded. That's alright, Sakura-chan, I'll just ehh. The pink-haired Kunoichi winked at Naruto and walked out with Kakashi. Before Naruto could turn around to make sure his ears weren't playing pranks on him, he was roughly pushed inside the council room. Naruto was about to yell at the rude Anbu, but bit back his retort and silently gulped as the door slammed shut. Dense as he was, he somehow knew that he wasn't getting that promotion today. The grins the council members were sporting weren't the same grins that Tsuki and Ayame wore when giving him an Uzumaki special, on the house. These were smiles that brought to mind visions of Orochimaru getting ready to play with little kids. Over at Ichiraku's ramen stand, Tsuki and Ayame sneezed, which caused Ayame to unwittingly knock a dish of Suna death peppers into a bowl of ramen. The buxom waitress then placed the hazardous bowl in front of an unsuspecting Rock Lee. Elsewhere, Orochimaru was giddy with excitement. He was furious when he found out that the Uchiha had been recaptured by a genin squad that had managed to kill his elite Sound 4 and Kimimaro. The reason for the Snake Sanin's happy demeanor was the Playboy scroll in his hands. Indeed, lured by the promise of underage boys at play, Orochimaru was conned into purchasing common softcore smut. Stifling the strange urge to sneeze, he gingerly opened the scroll, only to scream in fury when the busty blonde bombshell was revealed. Back in the council chambers, Naruto had finished describing his battle with Sasuke and the events leading up to the confrontation, as well as snippets of their past interactions. So then I picked up Sasuke Tem and brought him back to Konoha, and then Sakura-chan and Kakashi-sensei to the hospital. The council members looked at one another without speaking. An imperceptible nod passed among the members before Danzo, leader of the mysterious root, spoke up. Boy, do you swear that you have told us the whole truth? Know that lying to the council is a serious offense. Of course I do, Datbeo. Homura smirked and snapped his fingers, instantly summoning two Anbu. The first slapped a demon suppression seal on his forehead while the other clasped his hands and feet together with chakra-binding handcuffs, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. What's going on? Hyuga Hiashi stood up. Uzumaki Naruto, you are charged with reckless endangerment of your team, attempted murder of a Konoha nin with an assassination jutsu multiple times, attempted release of a demon, and perjury during your testimony regarding your crimes. Through his constricted throat, Naruto could only ask, huh? Danzo cleared his throat, holding up two scrolls. I have here the recorded testimonies of Haruno Sakura and Hatake Kakashi, both of which concur with each other and to an extent match with yours. However, there are a couple of critical points where the details don't match. He unsealed the first scroll and pumped some chakra into a seal, causing an image of Kakashi to float above the scroll. The masked nin was speaking. Honorable elders, although I was not part of the retrieval team, I had my summon Pakun travel with them to assist the search. Before I came here, I asked him to give me the details of Naruto's battle with Sasuke. The two were evenly matched throughout most of the fight. Fortunately, neither of them was using lethal force, they were trying to knock the other out. Right when the fight was about to come to a close, Naruto started to use Kyuubi's power, which gave him the advantage momentarily. From the account given to me, it appears that he was being possessed by the demon in order to defeat Sasuke. Before Naruto could deal the finishing blow, the curse seal started to activate. From what Pakun has said, it appears as if the presence of Kyuubi's Yukai was strong enough to draw out the evil influence of the curse seal, which Sasuke had been fighting for the past few months. By then, both sides were ready to collapse from exhaustion. Naruto created a Rasengan and Sasuke countered with the Chidori. However, before the attacks met, Sasuke was able to partially regain his senses. He powered down the Chidori, but was struck by the Rasengan in the chest. We were lucky enough to retrieve the last Uchiha and get him to the hospital, where he is expected to make a full recovery. We estimate that he should be ready to return to active duty in a couple of weeks. The image slowly faded, leaving a stunned Naruto. Why the hell did Kakashi lie about the fight? The way he described it almost made Naruto seem like the bad guy. Before Naruto could speak up or object, Danzo had unsealed the second scroll, and an image of Sakura was projected. Sasuke-kun has always looked out for the good of the team. It was thanks to him that we became genin in the first place. He was the one who impressed Kakashi-sensei enough to not fail us right away, and then he figured out the true meaning behind the exam when he gave Naruto Baka some of his food. Then, on our first C-rank mission, Sasuke-kun saved us multiple times, even when Naruto and I were too frightened to move. In our first fight, he managed to save the both of us before Kakashi finished things up, and then later, when Zabuza trapped Kakashi, Sasuke-kun managed to save him by getting Zabuza to release Kakashi. Even after he got that horrible curse seal, he was still thinking about Team 7. He saved Naruto and me from that Gaara, even after Gaara knocked me unconscious. Then, when Naruto challenged Sasuke-kun to a fight in the hospital, Sasuke-kun only accepted to try to help the Baka to blow off some steam. Thank goodness Kakashi-sensei managed to stop Naruto before he could use his Rasengan. Naruto didn't bother to listen anymore and instead closed his eyes. The pain of betrayal was too much for the Jinchuriki. A familiar voice growled in the back of his mind. Kill them, rip them to shreds. Let me take control. That seal and those puny mortals mean nothing to us if you let me take over. I will grant you the power to take your revenge. You will be a god among ants. I will never give in to your false promises and evil intent. I intend to honor the sacrifice of the Yondaime Hokage to the end of my life. If I can cast you back into hell with me, then even better. You foolish mortal, we could rule the world, and yet you shun my power for a village that has turned its back on you from the moment you were born. I know of the hatred you harbor. You just need to let it go, and I would lead you from there. I am not afraid of you, Kyuubi. With a hardened resolve, Naruto once again faced the smirking council members. Apparently, the recording of the pink-haired Kunoichi had finished playing. We also have a written testimony from Uchiha Sasuke confirming these statements. We will now pass our judgment. Uzumaki Naruto, we find you guilty of all aforementioned crimes. You will be placed in a maximum security prison until we decide on your punishment. For your sake, do not make any attempt to escape. With that, Naruto was whisked off to prison. Once Naruto was gone, Danzo turned back to the other council members. Ladies and gentlemen, the opportunity of a lifetime has been laid before us. The Hokage has left town, making Homura and Koharu the final decision makers regarding shinobi matters. Normally, a situation like this would warrant a harsh reprimand as well as a 2-month suspension from missions. However, in the case of an extreme violation of the shinobi conduct, as determined by a unanimous vote by the council members, the punishment can be immediate execution, public or private. I trust that all of you on the council are in support of the motion to immediately execute the demon. Looking over the nodding heads and shouts of assent, some more enthusiastic than others, Danzo couldn't help but smile. If I can't have the demon as my tool, then I must exterminate him. I assume you all wish to make this a public spectacle. We must hurry if things are to run smoothly. A few days later, over at Team 7's training ground, Sakura was fiddling with a scroll that the council members had given her earlier that day. Nay, Kakashi-sensei, is Naruto be alright? Kakashi smiled. Of course, Sakura, since when have we ever had to worry about our blonde baka? He's probably taking a break for a while. Ma, looks like I'll have to scold him for that when he shows up. Now why don't you open that scroll and see what's inside? Sakura opened the scroll and pored over the contents. Her eyes grew wide and she squealed. I'm being promoted to Chunin. One step closer to winning Sasuke-kun's heart. Kakashi ruffled Sakura's hair, with his eye curving into a U. Congratulations, Sakura, you're the first one on the team to be promoted, although you can be sure that Sasuke and Naruto are sure to catch up quickly. There should be a storage seal with your Chunin vest inside, take a look. Sakura complied, and with a poof of smoke, her very own Chunin vest fell into her waiting hands. While she stood, admiring her new vest, a messenger bird flew overhead, summoning all available shinobi and civilians to the village's main plaza. Kakashi placed a hand on Sakura's shoulder, breaking her off from her fantasies, and shushined the two of them back into the hidden village to pick up Sasuke and answer the summons. Tenten was not a happy kunoichi at the moment. Her teammate Neji had been hospitalized with a stab wound through the hand, which was especially bad since Neji's Jiyuken relied on his hands. That meant that she had been stuck with the twin green beasts of Konoha alone. They were currently catching a light lunch at a nondescript ramen stand when suddenly, Lee's face turned dark red and smoke started to leak out of his ears. Tenten started to back away, not knowing exactly what was wrong, but wanting nothing to do with her youthful teammate. Yosh, this ramen has stoked my flames of youth like no other. Ayame-chan, your youthfulness has inspired me to new heights. If I do not match this youthfulness today, I will run around Konoha 500 times backwards, and if I fail that, I will climb up the Hokage monument with only my thumbs. Lee, your undiminished flames of youth shine brighter than ever before. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. The two met in an incredibly manly man hug while Tenten and Neji looked away in disgust. Since when was Suna Death Pepper Ramen an actual menu item? It was then that Neji spotted the messenger bird flying overhead. Team 8 and Team 10 were gathered together at the barbecue restaurant eating lunch. Actually, Choji was the only one eating while the rest tried to pick out uneaten pieces of meat from the grill. Ino and Kiba were yelling at Choji for eating all the meat while Hinata tried to calm the two. Shikamaru was sleeping and Shino was calmly observing the group. It was good to be back and walking around. Shino wondered if Naruto would show up, as none of the rest of the retrieval team had seen him since the mission. Time to go, it looks like we've been summoned. Asuma's gruff voice stopped the commotion. Why were they calling for a village-wide gathering? They had already announced Sasuke's return the day after the retrieval team made it back, and the Hokage was apparently still safe, according to the shinobi grapevine. The two teams decided to head towards the Konoha Plaza, following the growing throng of people, civilians and shinobi alike. Danzo looked over the large gathering before him. The citizens of Konoha were all together to witness the elimination of one of Konoha's greatest enemies. Surely a new era of prosperity was about to shine on Konoha, a rebirth out of the ashes since the passing of the late Yondaime. He raised his arms benevolently and began to speak. Friends, I stand before you as the bearer of great news. This past week has been a blessing to Konoha. Our beloved Sasuke Uchiha has been returned to us, our relationships with our allies are stronger than ever before, and our enemies are weaker than before. There was a loud cheer from everybody as they reveled in the power of Konoha, the unity, brotherhood and compassion that defined their existence. Uchiha Sasuke, standing with Kakashi and Sakura, smirked and waved at the crowd. It is thanks to the hard work, dedication and sacrifice each of you have made for your village that has made this possible. The will of fire is strong within you all. The cheers and applause rose to new levels as the people in the crowd turned to one another and congratulated one another, smiling. Indeed, they were all proud to be a part of Konoha. Kiba grabbed Shino in a headlock, much to the indignation of the bug user. You hear that, bug boy? We're awesome. Inazaka Kiba, I share your enthusiasm, but you will kindly remove your body off my person before by insects drain you of every drop of chakra running through your coils. Kurenai simply shook her head, except for the fact that they weren't both excellent trackers, the two were complete opposites and a general headache to be around. Enough was enough. She hit the two upside the head to silence her bickering team. Danzo looked like he was about to start speaking again. Kiba turned his attention back to the stage, and Shino pushed his glasses further up his face. There are two shinobi amongst who have recently exemplified this spirit to its fullest, and although the details are classified, I wish for them to receive the recognition they deserve. Hitaki Kakashi and Haruno Sakura. Thousands of heads whirled as one to focus on the surprised, but smiling Junin and the slightly bashful new Chunin. The pair raised their hand to acknowledge the crowd. Sakura waited for the inevitable insult to her forehead from her longtime rival, but all she heard was applause. How strange. 50 feet away, a blonde kunoichi was seething. How dare Sakura surpass her once more? She didn't even go on the retrieval mission to recover Sasuke-kun. If this kept up, Sakura would continue to advance and maybe even become Tsunade's apprentice. Before she could shout out in protest, Shikamaru's shadow froze her in place and Choji clamped a large hand over her mouth, effectively muzzling the loud kunoichi. Man, so troublesome. Yeah, but what about Naruto? MMMPHHH. On the inside, Danzo was laughing. Things were going so easily, why hadn't he done this before? Soon, his position as Konoha's savior would be secured by finishing the job the Yondaime started 16 years ago. Thanks in part to the efforts of these two brave shinobi, we have finally been able to subdue one of our greatest enemies, a menace that has prowled through Konoha these past 16 years. Too long, we have let this danger walk through our streets, threatening our women, elderly and children. But no more. From now on, my friends, we can walk down our peaceful streets without fear of being killed in cold blood. We can put our children to sleep knowing that they are safe from the evil influences of Konoha's greatest villains. 16 years. 16 years we have lived in fear of its terrible wrath, but I stand here today, Konoha, to tell you that we may cast away these shadows of fear and instead step into the light, for today is the day that we slay the demon once and for all." Most of the older citizens erupted into the loudest cheers, yet while the younger generation looked around, slightly confused but still applauding. Danzo's face, projected onto the large screen behind him for the benefit of those too far to see clearly, shone with righteous self-conviction. In a poof of smoke, 4 Anbu appeared and started to perform a set of identical hand seals. Then, with a second poof, a large, hooded shinobi appeared with a mace in one hand and his masked prisoner's shoulder in the other. The 4 Anbu finished their hand seals at the same time and simultaneously called out Shishienjin no Jutsu. A shimmering, yet semi-transparent purple barrier of flame rose up, separating the crowd from the stage. For the 4 Anbu maintaining the jutsu, it was rather ironic that the very jutsu that prevented the rescue of the Sandame during the sand invasion was being used as to power Danzo's ideal of a new Konoha. The executioner smirked. He lived for moments like this. The Sandame rarely approved of public executions, and the Godime had outright refused to allow such a practice. As the head executioner of Konoha, he had the privilege of watching countless criminals die by his hands in numerous manners. The moment when the Shinigami claimed his victim's soul, the fleeting terror that flew over the visage of all of the captives gave him an indescribable pleasure. Today, he was going to share this delight with all of Konoha. It was time, he noted, as Danzo gave the signal. He pulled out his knife and got prepared, removing his captive's mask and with a quick slash of his knife, his shirt. Naruto felt the mask slip off his face, but kept his eyes screwed shut. Then he felt his shirt slide down to the ground as cool metal snaked its way up his body, ending at his throat. On the outside, he stayed silent without moving a muscle, but inside his mind, he was waging a fierce battle with the great fox demon. "Brat, they're going to kill us. We still have time, all you have to do is take off that seal." "I will not. I must protect those precious to me, even at the cost of my life. They don't give a shit about you, your whole team abandoned you. The Uchiha sent a Chidori through your chest. The other 2 bastards stabbed you in the back just to save his sorry. Say what you will, but I will not yield. You refused to heal me while I was being tortured in hopes that I would give in to your plans, but I did not. You're scared, Kyuubi, scared that a mere mortal, a child is capable of killing you. Don't you get it, brat? As partners, nothing would stand in our way. You could do whatever you want, destroy the world, save the world. Hell, you could create your own world. Think about it. Don't do anything foolish. I refuse to listen to you anymore. Farewell for now, Kyuubi. I'll see you in hell soon." AAA ARG. Resigned to his fate, Naruto raised his head to face for the last time the village that he had fought and bleed for. Kakashi's lone uncovered eye widened in horror. This can't be happening, it wasn't supposed to turn out this way. Next to him, a pale-faced Sakura was trying to understand the situation. Kakashi-sensei, why is Naruto up there? Why are they going to kill him? What did he do? The copy nin was stunned and couldn't answer. Dimly, the shinobi part of his mind registered the fact that Naruto was at the complete mercy of Danzo and the Anbu locked within the barrier. There was no way to save the blonde Jinchuriki even if his muscles would obey. He could only hang his head in shame. Then, Naruto lifted his head and Kakashi reluctantly mirrored the action and looked his student in the eyes. Or he would have, if they were still there. Knowing of Kyuubi's incredible healing powers, Danzo gave his root-free reign to inflict whatever torture they wished. The more sadistic shinobi were more than happy to oblige. By the time they were done, even the cruelest root member held a grudging respect for the Jinchuriki. The boy, young man had withstood every punishment Root had given without complaint. Even when they carved out his eyes, one by one, the only sign that he had felt any pain was the slight twitch in his neck. When they branded him in the forehead, Naruto acted as if he didn't notice. My god, what did they do to you, Naruto? As a battle-hardened kunoichi, there was little that Kurenai hadn't seen already. Watching shinobi kill each other was normal, and with the brutality of battle came shattered limbs, internal organs spilling out of bodies, and the pervasive stench of death. The sight before her, magnified by the screen set up behind the stage, horrified and sickened her. She fought the urge to throw up as she tried to tear her eyes away from the grisly spectacle. Subconsciously, her medical training kicked in as she looked over his injuries. It looked as if both eyes had been dug out by a kunai. There was a large burn that started along his right cheek and trailed all the way down his body. His left arm looked as if it had been broken multiple times. She counted 3, maybe 4 broken ribs. There was a stab wound in his stomach that had left a visible scar, which was almost as large as the fist-sized scar over his sternum. Finally, branded across his forehead were the words, "Demon of Konoha." Kurenai once again warded off the wave of nausea that had risen in her throat as she ended her brief medical diagnosis. Nearby, Ino was not as lucky as she emptied her lunch all over the ground. Kiba was about to launch into action to break through the barrier, but was stopped when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see Shikamaru shaking his head. "Shikamaru, what the hell are you doing? We can't just let him die like this." "Kiba, calm down. An assault on the barrier is suicide itself. Even if we manage the impossible and disrupt the jutsu, our actions would qualify as treason and we would be declared missing nin to be killed on sight. Is that what Naruto wants?" "Shikamaru is right," confirmed Asuma while Shino nodded his assent. Anyo, na Naruto-kun." The group turned towards the Hyuga heiress, wondering what she would say. "He's smiling, but it's a sad smile, his real smile." And with that final thought, the execution of Uzumaki Naruto began to rousing cheers. The executioner hit Naruto in the stomach with the mace, which sent him tumbling to the ground. A muffled scream pierced through the cheers of the crowd. Using his foot, he then flipped the blonde over onto his back, face up. A swift swipe of his knife opened up a slit in his throat. "Now, it's time to see how you die." He lifted his foot and stomped down on the boy's chest. The increased pressure sent jets of blood spurting out of his throat. The executioner continued to pump on the boy's chest with his foot to the increased cheers and shouts of the crowd. "Show me your face," the terror that grips man and demon alike in their last moments. Tsunade rushed through the gates, anxiously clutching her necklace. What was this feeling of dread that was overtaking her senses? The village looked normal enough, so it didn't look like there had been an attack by a hostile village, but the deserted streets were somewhat unnerving. Where were all of the villagers? Fingering her necklace, her mind wandered to her last meeting with Naruto before she left on her trip. Flashback. "Nani? Bachan, you're going on a mission." Nay, can I come with you?" Tsunade resisted the tempting urge to punch Naruto through the wall and instead smirked. "Sorry brat, but this is a super important Hokage level mission that only Jiraiya and I can do, although Shizune is probably going to tag around. That's why I'm going to come along. I've got to get the experience if I'm going to become the next Hokage Dadbao. Plus, you haven't been on a real mission in decades, so I should go with you to make sure you're safe." "You think I'm weak, brat?" Tsunade brandished a glowing fist, causing Naruto to back up a few steps in caution. Insinuating that the Hokage was weak was almost as deadly as calling her old. "No, it's just that you're one of my precious people, and I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you while you were gone." Tsunade softened. She knew she was close to Naruto, but to hear his say it warmed her heart. She got up from her desk, walked over to Naruto and gave him a big hug, unwittingly sticking his face between her large MMMRPH. She blushed and released the hug when she noticed the struggling Naruto. Naruto pouted for a while, but then suddenly brightened. "Hey, Bachan, close your eyes for a second." "Huh." Tsunade warily complied. She heard a light click and felt a light weight hanging from her neck. She opened her eyes and looked down, seeing her grandfather's necklace. "Naruto. This way, you'll be safe, nay. It's worked for me, so it will work for you, Tsunade-chan." Naruto stood up on his tiptoes and planted a chaste kiss on her forehead before leaping out the window into the streets. Tsunade stood there, dumbstruck with a slight blush creeping onto her face. End flashback. Tsunade could hear a loud roar in the distance, in the direction of the village plaza. Something big was happening, and she didn't like it one bit. She gave a signal to Jiraiya and Shizune and they rushed forward with greater haste. Something is definitely wrong here. For Naruto, everything was quiet for once. The incessant whispering for blood and gore was silenced, as the demon fox had likely retreated to some dark recess to contemplate its final moments of existence. Indeed, his mind was clearer than ever before. Was he alive? Was he dead? Pretty soon it would be all over. He barely registered the blow to the stomach and simply allowed gravity to pull him to the ground, reveling in the absence of the demonic presence that had plagued his entire life. It's so peaceful. Is this what it's like to be normal? It's nice. He continued to smile, enjoying his final moments of peace and allowed the light of death to chase away the darkness of his life. Outside the containment barrier, smiles and nods of approval could be seen on many of the onlookers' faces, but interspersed through the crowd were various ashen faces. The sheer brutality of his incarceration and subsequent execution was something only seen within the deepest bowels of the interrogation and torture department. The mere thought that something to this degree could be carried out in public and on a fellow Leaf Nin was shocking. It was sickening how the shinobi could monitor Naruto's passing life by the amount of blood that spurted out of his throat after each stomp. After what seemed like an eternity, the jet of blood started to die down, and with that, the life of the blonde Jinchuriki came to an end. The executioner lifted the blonde by the back of his neck and presented the still body to the crowd. This was it, the culmination of Konoha's redemption. The shouts of joy from the audience continued to rise in volume, only to be shattered by the heart-rending cry. Naruto oh 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 oh. It was the desperate plea of a lover finding her true love dead, or that of a mother nearing her deceased child. There was a bone-chilling silence as the crowd watched Tsunade rush forward to the execution platform, closely followed by Jiraiya and Shizune. A chakra-enhanced punch sent the executioner into a wall, and a follow-up Rasengan sent him through the wall. Shizune, seeing that the executioner had been disposed of, launched a series of paralyzing Senbon at Danzo, who quickly crumpled onto the floor. Tsunade cradled the boy's head in her lap. Today was supposed to be the day Naruto would finally gain the recognition and love he rightfully deserved, but instead, it marked the end of his dismal life as the container of the Kyuubi. She looked at his face, blankly staring at the two holes where his eyes had once been. Those sapphire eyes that had always shone brilliantly whenever Naruto talked about defending Konoha and protecting his precious people were gone, plucked away by the ignorant bastards overseeing Konoha. She raised her head and looked over the village with disgust before shushing away with Naruto in her arms. Return. The next day, Tsunade stood atop the Hokage Tower, underneath the Hokage Monument, next to an open casket containing Naruto. Naruto's Hitai-8 was recovered from the Anbu route at Tsunade's order and ceremoniously displayed in front of the casket. The previous night had been a complete riot. Naruto's apartment was burned down to the cheers of the mob. Tsunade had to summon the entire Anbu squad to shut down the revelries and celebrations in the streets. The civilian prisons were completely filled, and it wasn't until 3 in the morning that the streets had died down. She inwardly smirked in spite of the somber situation. If they thought that we're going to go celebrating the finishing of the Yondaime's final job, boy did she have a surprise for them. She surveyed the crowd gathered before her, and began the eulogy of Namikaze Naruto. Everything was white. Naruto was floating through space, when all of a sudden, a sharp burst of pain seared through his stomach. He watched as the red chakra he associated with the Kyuubi seeped out of the seal before rocketing away and out of sight. He put his hands in the ram seal and channeled some chakra. The seal on his stomach started to break into pieces and fade away. So we meet at last, Naruto, although far sooner than I had hoped. Naruto spun around and came face to face with a young, beautiful woman close to his age. Huh, who are you? Actually, where the hell am I? He blushed as he looked the stranger up and down. She giggled as Naruto scratched the back of his head. I do not have a name. However, I am the one you may know as Kami. Naruto fell to his knees and lowered his gaze. Kami-sama, I don't understand. Why have you come to visit one as lowly as I before I am cast to hell? Kami sighed. Why were they always like this, so damn angsty? If anyone, Naruto would be the one to break that trend, but here he was, on his knees. Kami reached down with one hand and lifted Naruto's face. Naruto, look at me. Don't give me any of that. I'm not worthy, crap either. For the 16 years of your life, you've carried yourself proudly, never doubting your strength. Kami-sama, a tainted soul such as I does not deserve your presence. The bastard fox made sure of that. Kami giggled, and the trilling laughter sent a shiver down Naruto's spine. Naruto, you have the cleanest soul of all mortals, left untouched by the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Surely you felt its presence leave your body a while ago. That is a sign that, unconstrained by your seals, the Kyuubi cannot reside within you. As opposing forces, you are just as toxic to it as it has been to you. Throughout the ages, I have seen many good men, but only a few have showed the same purity of heart that comes so natural to you. Finally, Naruto's mind slid into gear. Kami-sama, you said, throughout the ages, but you look only a few years older than me. And why are you a girl? Kami's eyes flashed dangerously. Is there something wrong with women being strong, brat? Naruto raised his hands in what he hoped to be a placating manner. Of course not, you're wise, powerful and beautiful, Kami. Kami started to blush, Basama. A monstrous tick appeared over her forehead. What was that? Well, you're obviously really old, but you deserve respect, so it's Kami Basama. Naruto punctuated the statement with a forceful glomp. Kami sighed. The real Naruto was back, although it looked like this was going to be all the respect that she would get. She decided to play around with the blonde shinobi. Striking a seductive pose, she asked in a sultry voice. Am I not attractive to you, Naru-kun? Naruto turned a shade of red normally reserved for overripe tomatoes and Hinata and choked before regaining his composure. Oh, but are you young enough to keep up with someone like me? Kid, you're 1,000 years too early for someone like me. Old hag, brat. The two continued glaring at each other for what seemed like an eternity, before collapsing into a fit of laughter. Finally, Kami stopped laughing and wiped a tear from her delicate features. Naruto-kun, back to what I was saying before. When Kyuubi left your body, it hid itself in an alternate dimension to recuperate. With each passing second, the demon is regaining his strength. That's right, and it's your task to defeat this beast. Naruto whirled around as a new presence appeared in the form of a sultry, scantily clad woman. As Naruto fought off a blush, the new apparition took the opportunity to introduce herself by draping her body all over the bashful blonde. Ah, Naruto-kun, we finally meet. I am Yami, the beautiful and dangerous Lord of Hell. Gah. Naruto stumbled back, stifling a nosebleed. Yami giggled, trailing a finger along Naruto's cheek. Nay, Oni-chan, Naruto-kun is rather shy, isn't he? The two immortals laughed at Naruto's expense, causing the blonde to blush a further shade of red. Wiping away a tear, Kami settled back into her more serious demeanor, an action duplicated by her devilish counterpart. Naruto-kun, Yami and I wish that you go back to the realm of humans. Yami cut in, and burned Konoha to the ground, Kami elbowed her sister in the gut, in order to serve as our champions and completely obliterate the fox. Yami nodded while Naruto stared at the two. First of all, I'm dead, and secondly, why can't you two do it? Yami smirked. You see, Naruto-kun, while Kami-nichan and I have control over our respective realms, at this, Kami emphasized the point by snapping her fingers, which caused Naruto's clothes to disappear, leaving him in ramen print boxers while Yami leered. She continued, Nichan and I are not allowed to interfere with the mortal realm. That's why we can send you back to your body if you want. Kami put on a pensive face. However, you might want to hurry, since without the preservation jutsu that your precious Tsunade-chan is using, your body would have been unusable. Also, it looks like she's going to either burn your body or bury you during your funeral, so you might want to hurry it up. But before that, there are a couple of people who want to see you. Yo, brat, slap, baka. First time you see our son since he was a baby and this is how you talk to him. Naruto looked towards the source of the two voices and saw two hazy figures. Naruto-kun, unfortunately, we cannot materialize more than this. However, we have always loved you and watched over you. It has pained us so much to watch your suffering, but you have made us proud, son. It is time to learn of your heritage. I, Namikaze Minato, am your father. I think you know me as the Yondaime Hokage. Your mother here is Uzumaki Kushina. And, Minato and Kushina blinked in surprise. You didn't think I'd figure it out for myself. I look exactly like you. Naruto quickly dodged a punch from Kami for his language. Plus, I have mom's name, and it wasn't hard to dig up the marriage certificate for more proof. Anyways, I'm surprised nobody else figured it out, especially since I'm supposed to be the village baka. While we're at it, what the hell is up with sealing the Kyuubi in me? Did you think that the village would treat me like a hero? Huh. Minato's voice was quiet. Actually, yeah, I did. Naruto snorted, causing one of the smoky figures kick the other in the face. Look at what you did to your son, Minato. You should be ashamed of yourself. But Kushina-chan, don't you Kushina-chan me. Kami and Yami sweat dropped. Naruto looked at the pair with squinted eyes. So, do I have any cool bloodlines or anything? Minato chuckled. Not that I'm aware of, but our compound and jutsu library should still be around. Other than that, we become stronger with old-fashioned hard work. Are you sure? So I can't create ice mirrors? No. What about firing my bones at my opponents? No. I can't even fire laser beams out of my eyes. No. And where the hell did that one come from? Are you stupid? Oi, who are you calling stupid? Stupid. Kami slapped the two upside the head to get them back on track. Yami spoke up. While we'd love to train you for an eternity and watch you get strong, she traced circles on an embarrassed Naruto's chest, we really need to get you back before it's too late. She paused. Well, it looks like your precious Bachan has just about wrapped up her lovely little speech. Seems like she's finally found out the truth and has told everybody about it. Man, you should see their faces. Better yet, wait until you see their faces when you come back. Kami nodded. Naruto-kun, it's time for you to go back and live in the mortal realm as our champion. Since we cannot train you here, you'll want to leave as soon as you can so that Yami and I can come and give you our gifts. For now, they're secrets, but you'll love them for sure. Naruto nodded. Everything was happening too fast to process, but he understood that he was going to go back and get stronger to protect his precious people from the demon fox. Speaking of which, he needed to go out to travel and train. He felt a soft pressure on his cheek, and flushed bright red when he noticed that Kami had planted a chaste kiss on his cheek. Yami swooped in on the other side and kissed the blonde on the other cheek. Naruto's eyes widened as he felt a hot tongue trace over his cheek and head towards his mouth. He quickly pulled away, stuttering. Ah, Naru-chan is so kawaii, purred Yami. Kami simply shook her head. Why did her stupid sister always have to ruin moments like these? She turned back to the hyperventilating boy and waved her hand to calm him down. Okay, enough of that already. She held up a glowing hand and placed it on Naruto's forehead, and with that, Uzumaki Naruto faded away. The last thing he heard was his parents whispering to him. Good luck, son. Go get laid or something. Ignore your idiot of a father, Naruto-kun. Remember, we have always loved you. Naruto felt a floating sensation before being surrounded in total darkness once more. With a start, Naruto realized that he was back in his body. Slowly, his senses started to kick back in and he started to shuffle about. He was in some sort of narrow wooden container. Before he could process anything else, a lump of dirt was thrown in his face. With a twitching eyebrow, Naruto leapt up and shouted, "What the hell was that for?" Tsunade drew a shaky breath before steadying her nerves. The foolish village would finally learn of their tremendous folly in executing her Naruto-kun. Tsunade blinked. Her Naruto-kun. She'd think about that later. She began to speak, her voice echoing throughout Konoha. What does it mean to have a family? Surely it is much more than common blood that defines the ties that bind one another. A family is a group of people in whom you can place your absolute trust and love. For our families, we are willing to do anything to ensure their safety and happiness. It is that feeling of love and acceptance for which we fight our hardest, and the pain of loss and loneliness that makes us cry the most. I ask you this because we are here to mourn the loss of a man who was never given the chance to feel this love and acceptance, yet still felt it necessary to protect not only those he held dear, but also this entire village. You were all witness to the public execution of Uzumaki Naruto, and I have been sickened by the behavior of Konoha since. Have we fallen to the point where we celebrate the death of our own kind? At this, a brave villager decided to shout out, "Hell yay," and were proud of Ak. Jiraiya had appeared in front of the man and lifted him by the neck. A blast of killer intent and the sudden constriction of his windpipes prevented the villager from speaking anymore. Jiraiya hesitantly turned back to the Godime, ready to intervene in case her fearsome temper caused major destruction. Instead, Tsunade started to laugh, which startled many of the present shinobi who knew of her connection to the deceased blonde. Let me tell you a story. As you all know, 16 years ago, the Kyuubi no Yuko attacked Konoha. Konoha fought valiantly against the demon, the Kyuubi was simply too powerful. As those old enough to know remember, the Yondaime Hokage sacrificed his life to defeat the Kyuubi, but to seal away the essence of the demon, he required a newborn child to house the soul. With his dying breath, the Yondaime asked us all to treat the boy as a hero. However, it was the blind ignorance of the populace that resulted in the complete isolation of this child. Although actual physical abuse was rare, he was never given the love and care that we all take for granted. Still, this child persevered and grew up, never turning to hate or evil. His spirit embodied the will of fire that our beloved Sandaime believed in. Alone, he was able to inspire those that he met, both inside of and outside Konoha without asking anything in return. It was a terrible fate to be bestowed on such a noble shinobi. I ask of you, fathers and mothers, to look at your children and imagine them living such a life, hated and ignored for something out of their control without the comforts of a family to help them through. Uzumaki Naruto was that child so unjustly persecuted these years, cast aside by those that he had sworn to protect. Another villager worked up the courage to shout out, "That demon brat killed the fourth." For all we know, it's the Kyuubi itself that was executed. An Anbu officer materialized and knocked him out with a swift chop to the neck. Tsunade sneered and was about to speak when Jiraiya spoke up instead. For crying out loud, when will you all ever learn that Naruto isn't the stupid fox? Yondaime and I designed the seal so that the kid would become the jailer of the Kyuubi, not the Kyuubi itself. Of course, the seal wasn't perfect. Simply put, regardless of what we've done on the seal, Naruto had the final say on the success of the seal. I bet you all didn't realize that had he wished, he could have removed the seal and set the Kyuubi to wreak destruction on this ungrateful village. We all owe our lives to his mere existence, and yet he was treated like trash. I know that Minato is up there, disappointed at how you all treated his only son. At this startling announcement, the village was swept with a flurry of emotion, ranging from confusion to disbelief. Before pandemonium could fully settle in, Tsunade raised her arms calling for silence once more. Yes, what Jiraiya said was correct. The late Uzumaki Naruto is the only son of Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. I have recently secured Naruto's birth certificate, which carries the seals of the Yondaime and Sandaime. The certificate names Uzumaki Naruto as the son of the Yondaime. The Yondaime made this sacrifice, hoping that you all would see his son as a hero and treat him with respect and dignity. Instead, you have spat upon his image and ideals, trashed his legacy and turned away from his teachings. At this, the crowd started to shift uneasily. Academy teachers who openly boasted of sabotaging the blonde's education hung their heads in shame, as many of them were classmates of the Yondaime. Many shopkeepers and restaurant owners were feeling sick to their stomach as they remembered refusing service to the child, or charging exorbitant prices whenever he tried to pay. The Konoha 12 and their Junin sensei simply stood there, each lost in his or her own thoughts. For the genin, news of Naruto's Jinchuriki status and treatment opened their eyes, and for the first time, they saw the pain and suffering that Naruto lived with. The Junin were saddened that they had done nothing to alleviate the boy's suffering, serving to further contribute to the boy's isolation. The revelation of Naruto's parentage came as a shock, and only served to further the mortification they felt at their inaction regarding Naruto's treatment. Naruto-kun, I should have been there for you. I'm sorry. TCH, you're not as troublesome as I thought. Single quote, comma, single quote. Yash. You truly rival Lee in his flames of youth. Naruto, I treated you like trash back in the academy, only looking at Sasuke. Please forgive me. Naruto, thank you for inspiring Hinata and giving her confidence. It's a shame that such a promising shinobi was cut down so early. So you do know the burden of carrying a seal, perhaps better than me, and you fought your fate until the end. You never ceased to surprise us all, Uzumaki Naruto. Your eyes were truly greater than mine. We've always said that those who like Ichiraku ramen are good people. Never abandon one of your pack, man, we that up. As expected of my youthful rival. Naruto, thank you for showing Neji that fate isn't everything. So that's why father was so concerned for you. All this time, Naruto, I've treated you like dirt. I don't deserve to be called your teammate. PFT, Dobi. Obito, Sensei, I have failed you too once again. The group looked up to see Tsunade speaking once again. Everybody has a dream, and Naruto's dream was to be Hokage. If you've spent any time with him, you would have heard him talk about this particular dream. The first time I heard it, I laughed at him and threw his dream back in his face. The eyes he used to look at me showed the pain at having his dreams constantly rejected, but also the determination in proving me wrong. And he did. After mastering the legendary Rasengan in a couple of weeks, he saved me from Orochimaru and Kabuto, without regard to his own safety. I can proudly say that I have had the honor of getting to know Naruto before. Her voice trailed away and the crowd shifted uneasily again. After a moment, Tsunade once again lifted her head and spoke in a clear voice. Earlier, I asked you all to think about your families and what they mean to you. Uzumaki Naruto was taken away from his family at birth and was never given the chance to understand love and caring. He cherished the bonds he had with those who had the fortune of knowing him and would fight to the death to protect those bonds. It goes without saying that the betrayal of these bonds, especially from those close to him, hurt Naruto the most. She paused to let her words settle over the crowd. I ask that we have a moment of silence to respect Naruto. Tsunade closed her eyes, silently daring the villagers to interrupt her. However, silence carried through Konoha until Tsunade opened her eyes once more. Today, we bid farewell to one of Konoha's greatest heroes, the man who truly saved and protected us all to the very end, a man who, scorned and ignored in life, shall be revered and honored in death. Farewell, Namikaze Naruto. With that, Tsunade scooped up a pile of soil and ceremoniously emptied the contents into the casket, covering his face. Farewell Naruto-kun, you'll always hold a place in my heart. Before she could walk away to allow others to pay their respects, a familiar voice roared out from the casket. A very familiar voice. What the hell was that for? The only sound that could be heard was the whispering of the breeze that passed by. Then, as a collective whole, the citizens of Konoha all shouted one inarticulate word. EHHHHHHHHH. When Naruto was given the label of Konoha's #1 surprising ninja, various memories instantly come to mind. There were the minor pranks that culminated in the defacing of the Hokage monument. Those at the Chunin exam remembered Naruto's timely fart in beating Kiba and Naruto reopening his Tenketsu to defeat Neji. Although unexpected, these events could easily be explained as creative spontaneity. However, when a supposedly dead Naruto jumps out shouting at his own funeral during which he was revealed as the only son of the Yondaime, he wasn't surprising anymore. He was a miracle. When Naruto jumped out of the casket and showed the entire population that, indeed, Uzumaki Naruto was alive, a few things happened. A sobbing Tsunade and Shizune team glomped Naruto while Jiraiya scribbled fiercely in his notebook. Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke turned pale. Hinata fainted murmuring, "Naruto-kun." Shino's sunglasses slipped down his nose. After gently pushing a slightly hysterical Tsunade away, Naruto flashed his famous grin. "Hey, it's good to be back, but for now, it's goodbye. Kami asked me to go travel for a while, so you can bet that I'm going to get stronger when I return. I'll see you all later everyone because I have to hurry, otherwise Kami-chan and Yami-chan will be mad at me and do weird things to me. Oh, and you don't have to worry about Kyuubi for now, either. It's sealed away in another dimension. Later, Bachan." With that, the former Jinchuriki walked up to Tsunade, kissed her cheek and then sped off into the distance to complete his mission from Kami, leaving the entire population of Konoha stunned into silence. Lee turned to Neji. "What the just happened?" Neji cried tears of joy. A lone shout echoed throughout Konoha, "Naruto." A year passed without any news of the blonde, a period marked by normalcy. The sun still rose in the east and set in the west, Jiraiya still peaked on women and Kakashi still read porn. However, it was painfully obvious that there was something different about Konoha ever since the resurrection of the blonde. Tsunade no longer complained about the mounds of paperwork and instead worked tirelessly to improve Konoha's condition, which was set to lead Konoha to even greater prosperity. Shinobi were also working and training their hardest, inspired by the story of Uzumaki Naruto. A few months after his departure, when stories of the Genin's adventures started to circulate, the Uzumaki Naruto fan club was created, along with the first ever Naruto superstore, which sold Naruto merchandise. Coincidentally, the superstore was erected right next to Ichiraku's ramen stand, whose business had flourished due to the popularity of their new Naruto special. Team 7 had gained a new member, Sai, and was currently on the training grounds standing around. Sasuke still had a scowl on his face as he tried to burn a hole through a training post with his stare. Sakura had toned down from her uninhibited fangirl days, but still snuck occasional glances at Sasuke. Sai was smiling at Kakashi, who had his beloved orange book open. Instead of focusing on his favorite smut, Kakashi's mind continued to wander over the third member of the original Team 7. Images of Obito and the Yondaime constantly bombarded his mind over his betrayal. Those who ignore rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash, huh? The stern visage of the Yondaime on the Hokage's monument glared at Kakashi, as if focusing its disgust on the masked copy Nin. With a sigh, Kakashi snapped his book shut and coughed to get his team's attention. Hopefully, Tsunade would give them a mission when they went to report in. When Team 7 entered the Hokage's office, Tsunade didn't even look up at the trio and threw a scroll at Kakashi, who deftly caught it without a word. Kakashi internally sighed, "She's been that way ever since we did that to Naruto. Obito, Minato-sensei, I've failed you too." Kakashi led his team out of the Hokage's office before opening the scroll to reveal an escort mission to Suna. "Another C rank, huh? At least we can get out of Konoha on this mission." He then turned to his team with an eye smile. "Well, it looks like we have a C rank escort mission to Suna. Meet me at the village gates in an hour." 3 hours later, Team 7 walked through the village gates on their way to Suna. The group was so wrapped up in their own thoughts that they did not notice as a hooded figure walked past them into Konoha, with a ghost of a smile on his face. The mysterious visitor strolled through the gates of Konoha after passing by Team 7, where immediately, he was confronted by the two Chunin standing guard. Azumo, who was standing guard at the gate, had watched as Team 7 left the gates. So, Tsunade-sama finally gave them a mission outside Konoha. Maybe she couldn't stand them after what they did to the kid. Azumo felt a twinge of guilt course through his body at the memory of the blonde Jinchuriki. It had been that way over the past year. It seemed as if his very name was enough to cast a gloomy atmosphere. Would the son of the Yondaime come back and destroy Konoha? The villager shuddered at the thought that they might have turned the legacy of their greatest hero into their most feared enemies. Next to Azumo, Kotetsu was also experiencing similar feelings of guilt. He remembered the Iwa War during which the Yondaime had saved him from certain death using this famous Hiroshin to catch the enemy shinobi by surprise with a Rasengan. After Naruto's lineage was revealed, images of his savior kept appearing in his mind, only for the picture to subtly change into that of a sightless Naruto. The duo finally noticed the stranger that had ambled through the gates and moved to confront the hooded figure. Halt! What is your purpose in Konoha? Azumo fingered the kunai in his pouch, but the visitor raised his hands in a sign of non-aggression. The Chunin remained wary as Kotetsu repeated his question. What is your business in Konoha? In a hoarse, scratchy voice, the stranger replied, my business is with the Hokage and the Hokage only. I ask you to not interfere. If you must, one of you can accompany me on my way. Kotetsu nodded at Azumo, who resumed guard duty. The man seemed harmless after all. Just another day on the job for the pair. Kotetsu's suspicions diminished as he accompanied the man through the streets. The thought that the man could pose a danger to the citizens of Konoha seemed laughable. Earlier, an errant ball thrown by one of the village struck the man square in the back, which caused him to stumble a bit. When the child ran forwards apologizing profusely, he simply laughed it off and returned the ball before continuing on his way with Kotetsu trailing behind. The rest of the journey passed without any further incidents, so when they arrived at the Hokage Tower, Kotetsu bid the stranger farewell and returned to his post. At the receptionist's desk, the man was stopped once more. Apparently, the Hokage was at work and didn't wish to be bothered at the moment. The receptionist quickly explained that the Hokage often buried herself in her work, possibly to mask her worry over Naruto's well-being. The man simply bowed and turned back towards the exit, leaving without another word. Looks like we have to this the hard way. The man looked up at a window high up in the tower and grinned underneath his hood. Tsunade was poring over the treaty and proposals that had come in recently. Once word of Naruto's execution had gotten out, many of Konoha's allies had sent representatives demanding an explanation for the execution. Gaara's arrival mere days after Naruto's execution had been a nightmare. Flanked by his two siblings, the newly appointed Kazekage had threatened to break off all diplomatic relations and declare war, and emphasized his point by sending a blast of killer intent at the council members. It had taken the entire council apologizing to the enraged former psychopath in order to even have the opportunity to explain Naruto's improbable resurrection. After being promised that Konoha would send word of Naruto's return as soon as possible, Gaara swept away, leaving a relieved Tsunade while a couple of the civilian council members crept away to change their soiled pants. Other dignitaries followed Gaara, each expressing disappointment and disgust at Konoha's behavior. Many threatened to withdraw from their treaty agreements, forcing Tsunade and the council to offer to rework their treaties and arrangements. Tsunade sighed after putting aside yet another piece of paper. She sat back in her chair to close her eyes and think. No matter what, it seemed as if Naruto was constantly the source of trouble in Konoha, even after his belated acceptance by the majority of the villagers. No, she corrected herself. It was Konoha's foolishness that had caused this in the first place. All they could do was work to change Konoha back into the village that the Yondaime had fought to protect. Maybe Naruto could be convinced to stay in Konoha, where he could find a nice girl to marry and possibly give her grandbabies to spoil. She leaned back and happily daydreamed of tiny blonde, blue-eyed bundles of energy running around, oblivious to her surroundings. The gentle breeze felt nice as it ushered out the stale air. Maybe later she'd go to the hot springs with Shizune for a nice soak. Wait a moment. Nice breeze. Tsunade always kept the window closed so that her paperwork wouldn't blow away. That meant. Tsunade's eyes flew open and instantly locked onto the hooded figure standing in front of her. She instinctively threw out a punch, but the visitor nimbly skipped backwards to avoid the blow. She held out her fist and glared at the intruder. Before she could question the mysterious stranger, the man spoke up first. Man, you've really got to work on controlling that temper. First time I see you in ages and you try to hit me. Sheesh. Tsunade Bachan. Tsunade froze as all of her anger vanished. Her outstretched arm fell limply to her side as she slowly stood up and walked over to the hooded man. After what seemed to be an eternity to the two, Tsunade reached the man and raised her hands to grab the hood with both hands. Tsunade pulled back the hood inch by agonizing inch, hardly daring to raise her hopes. Finally, Tsunade removed the offending garment and gazed into the man's piercing blue eyes. She finally released the breath that she had been holding, murmuring the name that had haunted her dreams over the past year. Naruto. After a tearful, bone-crushing hug, Naruto told an incredulous Tsunade about his meeting with Kami and Yami. Tsunade's sweat dropped when she heard that Naruto had flirted with two of the most powerful beings in the universe before calling for Shizune. When Shizune entered, she immediately tackled Naruto in a fierce hug, leaving Naruto gasping for breath. Tsunade had Naruto repeat his story, and when he was finished, Shizune wiped away a tear while Tsunade coughed with her hand outstretched, palm face up. Grumbling, Shizune dumped a wad of cash into Tsunade's hand, grumbling that Kami should have been a man. With a final hug, Shizune left the office with a smile on her face. Tsunade turned back to Naruto. So your eyes are. Naruto grinned. Yeah, a gift from Kami Basama. Too bad they don't fire lasers or anything. A gust of tightly compressed air slapped Naruto upside the head. Tsunade simply nodded. There wasn't much to say, especially since it had been divine intervention that had brought Naruto back to life in the first place. She cleared her throat. Anyways, we need to test you to see your strengths so we can place you on missions. The Chunin exams are 4 months away, and I doubt you'd want to wait until then. That's why we've arranged a test for you. It's going to be a one-on-one combat to determine your abilities. Do you accept? Naruto replaced his hood and nodded. Who am I to face? Tsunade snapped her fingers and with a puff of smoke, a figure appeared in the shadows. Your opponent will be me, Namikaze-san. Naruto watched as the figure stepped out of the darkness. Beneath his hood, Naruto's eyes widened in recognition. He's what? Tsunade snapped her fingers and with a puff of smoke, a figure appeared in the shadows. Your opponent will be me, Namikaze-san. Naruto watched as the figure stepped out of the darkness. Beneath his hood, Naruto's eyes widened in recognition. Hyuga Hiyashi nodded. Namikaze-san, I would like to apologize for my role during the events leading to your execution. I also speak on behalf of the Hyuga clan when I ask you to forgive us for our transgressions against your person. Naruto responded by merely tilting his head. Hiyashi then answered the unspoken question. I was a teammate of your father and counted myself as one of his closest friends. He stressed teamwork and compassion over everything else. I cannot count the number of times he has saved my family and me. When I found out that I had played such a direct role in the murder of my best friend's son, the grief was unbearable. Tsunade glanced towards Naruto and whispered, Hiyashi-sama tried to take his own life. The only sign that Naruto had heard was the slight movement as he focused more attention on Hiyashi. Having guessed Tsunade's message, Hiyashi continued, it was at that moment that Neji, of all people, stopped me. He told me that by taking my life, I would be running away from all Minato again. He told me of how his battle with you during his first Chunin exam had changed him, a metamorphosis that continues to this day as he and I work with Hinata on healing the rift between the main house and the branch houses. For that, I thank you. To Tsunade's surprise, the Hyuga clan bowed to Naruto, an action that Naruto reciprocated. There was a brief silence before Naruto spoke. Who arranged this fight? Hiyashi stepped forward. Namikaze-san, I requested to administer your test when I heard Tsunade-sama mention it in passing. I have seen how you have changed my nephew's life. I wish to see that strength myself and better hopefully understand the meaning behind that strength. Only then may I consider myself worthy of being a friend of Minato. As Naruto considered Hiyashi's words, Tsunade stole nervous glances at the blonde by her side. What had happened during his year away from Konoha? How had he changed? Naruto's calm voice broke the lull in the conversation. Very well, Hiyashi-sama. Naruto turned to Tsunade. Where and when will the test be held? The test will be held tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the Chunin exam stadium. I trust you do not mind if a few shinobi decide to watch. Naruto shook his head. If that is all, then I will take my leave. Tsunade-sama, Namikaze-san. Before Hiyashi could shushin out of the office, Naruto spoke up. Naruto is fine, Hyuga-sama. For the first time during his visit, a small smile passed over Hiyashi's lips. Very well, Naruto. In return, I ask that you address me as Hiyashi. Know that no matter what the rest of Konoha may say, you will always be welcome among the Hyuga. With that, Hiyashi shushined out of the office, leaving a flabbergasted Tsunade and a bemused Naruto. Naruto turned back to Tsunade and gave her a quick hug before leaving, calling over his shoulder, I'll see you at the stadium soon, Bachan. Tsunade watched the blonde walk off before heading back to her desk. Maybe there was still some hope left. Unfortunately, he's even more distrustful of strangers, especially those responsible for his persecution. But still, it's nice to see that Naruto is still giving people a chance. She sighed as she sat down at her desk. The paperwork wasn't going to do itself anytime soon. But first, Tsunade pulled out a blank scroll and began writing a letter to Gaara, informing him that Naruto had safely returned to Konoha. The possibility of one former Jinchuriki attacking Konoha with righteous vengeance was bad enough. Tsunade shuddered at the thought of two pissed-off former demon containers rampaging throughout Konoha. As Naruto walked down the street, still wearing his cloak and hood, he couldn't help but feel a tiny bit of hope. So the Hyuga are on my side, huh? Perhaps Konoha can truly change. The rumbling of his stomach cut an end to his musings. A trip to Ichiraku's was in store. Ah, that was fantastic. Another bowl, old man. Miso this time. Haha, you remind me of our favorite customer. He's been out of town lately, but when he comes back, I'm going to treat him to our newest ramen, the Naruto special. Whoa, you named a ramen after me. Sniff, sniff, that's so beautiful. Is that you, Naruto? Amidst the clattering of pots and pans, Tsuki leapt over the counter, followed closely by Ayame. The Ichiraku duo enveloped their favorite customer in a group hug. Naruto felt a rogue hand slip southward and jumped back quickly. Ayame Nichan. The buxom ramen waitress winked at the blushing blonde before heading back to her station to place another bowl of ramen in front of Naruto. With a sigh, Naruto turned to the steaming bowl of ramen placed in front of him. Out of the corner of his eye, an orange sign caught his eye. The Naruto Superstore, the best place for all things Naruto. What the hell is that? Tsuki laughed. So it looks like you finally noticed. It seems that you've got yourself quite a following amongst the younger shinobi. Yay, but it looks like a piece of crap. Indeed, the Grand Naruto Superstore was nothing more than a rundown shack next to Ichiraku's ramen store. Ayame giggled and ruffled Naruto's hair. Why don't you go check it out after you're done? But first, why don't you tell us about what you've been up to? I don't want to be insensitive or anything, but we're pretty curious as to how you, came back to life. Tsuki turned down the stove to listen better, trying to hide his own burning curiosity. As Naruto began to explain the events following his execution, Tsuki had trouble believing that the man in front of him had come back at the behest of Kami herself. But there he was, sitting there and telling his story with flailing arms and exaggerated facial expressions. Just maybe Kami was real. Tsuki paled as he realized that he hadn't prayed in quite some time. As Naruto continued to retell his tale to a captivated Ayame, a certain Chunin instructor happened to pass by and notice the blonde. Naruto, is that you? Naruto turned and saw Iruka standing in the middle of the street staring at him. Iruka-sensei. Seeing his former academy teacher for the first time in a year, Naruto ran towards Iruka and tackled the academy instructor in a bone-crushing hug. Iruka pried Naruto off and stared at him. Naruto, you look more grown up than when I last saw you. And you have your eyes again, after what they did to you. Yeah, Kami gave them to me, so now they're back. Ah, Tsunade-sama mentioned that to me just now. Took me a while to believe it, bet you certainly are Konoha's #1 surprising ninja. In fact, there's something she wanted me to give you. Close your eyes for one moment, will you, Naruto? Naruto complied, and soon felt a familiar weight being tied around his forehead. He opened his eyes to see a smiling Iruka. Raising one hand, he slowly traced his hand over the worn metal of his old Hittite, remembering all the memories contained within the symbol of Konoha. That's right. Now that I am once again wearing the symbol of the leaf, I must once again protect those that I hold dear to me. If the village is willing to accept me this time, then it'll be even better. Just like last time, right, Iruka-sensei? Yeah, Naruto, but you have to agree that the circumstances were different last time. So what do you plan to do now? Well, I finished eating, so I figured I'd take a look inside that store over there. Iruka smirked. Are you, Naruto? Just because you have your own store doesn't mean that you should go stomping around inside for kicks. Naruto pouted. Geez, Iruka-sensei, I just wanted to know why a store named after me looks like a piece of shit. Ah, so you haven't been inside yet, have you? Tell you what, I'll go in with you and we'll have a look together. But first, put on your hood. You don't want to attract too much attention, trust me. Naruto nodded and raised his hood. After paying for his meal and leaving a generous tip for Ayame, Naruto followed Iruka to the store. Whatever Naruto was expecting to see inside the store, it certainly was not an empty room, save for the lone staircase at the back of the room. He turned to Iruka. What's the staircase for? So you've seen through the genjutsu already. Impressive, seeing how genjutsu was your worst subject at school. The genjutsu, as well as the store itself, was Tsunade-sama's idea. Before, when your fan club built the store, it was open to everybody. Unfortunately, there are still some people, civilian and shinobi alike, who still cannot see you for who you really are. Naruto nodded, as this was expected. After all, for every person that able to own up to a mistake and is willing to change, there will be another who stubbornly sticks to his or her own beliefs. As such, the original store was constantly vandalized. One night, a bunch of shinobi and civilian gathered and tried to burn the store down. Tsunade-sama herself broke up the crowd herself. While she couldn't punish the civilians for their actions, she made sure that Ibiki personally saw to the shinobi involved. Lots of gruesome rumors have floated out of the torture and interrogation department regarding their fate. That's why she decided to put up this genjutsu around the store. The shinobi who still fear you don't dare to interfere, thanks to Tsunade-sama's stern warnings, and the civilians can't see through the genjutsu either, so it works out. Well, that was mostly during the early days when people were still starting to change their minds regarding you and the Kyuubi. Naruto, there are a lot of people who are ashamed of how you were treated and now see you differently than they did before your execution. However, there are still people who fear and hate you out of ignorance and stubbornness. Even though they aren't out in the open anymore, you still need to remember that not everybody has accepted you. Naruto bowed his head slightly at this. Iruka noticed and placed a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder. Don't worry about it, Naruto. Just give it some time and they'll eventually come around. You have a special knack for that. For now, why don't we head downstairs and check out what's inside? It's been a while since I've looked around. Naruto nodded and the pair headed down the flight of stairs. When the two reached the bottom of the stairwell, Naruto stared at the sight before him, mouth wide open. Everything was so orange. Iruka half expected the blonde to run from stand to stand in a hyperactive frenzy, trying on the merchandise and chatting happily with the other customers milling about. Instead, Naruto slowly walked among the merchants, occasionally fingering an outfit or picking up and examining an action figure. Iruka sadly watched Naruto, knowing that despite his sunny disposition, there was a deeper emotion that surfaced on occasion, the desire to fit in and find unconditional love. Naruto, there are so many times that I wish that I could have been there for you when you were younger. Back at the academy, I treated you much like the others did. If it wasn't for the Sandame, I wouldn't have been able to see this side of you today, I would be like the rest. You are a much better man than I will ever be, Naruto. Iruka was roused from his musings when he heard Naruto's voice. Hey, Iruka-sensei, I was wondering. Why exactly are the people here doing what they're doing? What do they see in me? Naruto, it may seem a bit excessive, but believe me, all these people here that are buying and selling your stuff truly have been able to look within themselves and realize that they have made a mistake. Like I said earlier, you'll find that many people, especially the younger generation, look up to you. You're a hero to them. Naruto shifted uneasily, and Iruka instantly picked up on the cause. Naruto, this is nothing like the rabid obsession that the girls had for Sasuke back in the academy. The girls then were caught up in their fantasies over a silly crush. These are people who look up to you for who you are and what you have done for Konoha your whole life. You deserve this recognition. It's something you've worked for. Yeah, but aren't they just doing this because of who my father was? Naruto, I know, but still, aren't they doing this not because of me, but out of obligation to my father? Iruka walked up to Naruto and grabbed his cloak. Pulling his face in close, Iruka stared into Naruto's hooded eyes. Naruto, I beg of you, please have some more faith in Konoha. You've been ignored for much of your life, and now that people are giving you attention, you're turning them away. You're just running away from your past. Naruto's eyes flared dangerously. He threw Iruka's hands off his cloak and stared into Iruka's now fearful eyes. Iruka, do not remind me of the hell that I went through as a child. You claim to know the pain of isolation, but do you know the joy of finally being accepted, and then having that all taken away? Naruto backed away and whispered softly, it hurts so much, Iruka-sensei. To fight so hard for a place that despises your very existence in hopes that one day things would turn around. Naruto, Naruto's smile was visible underneath his hood. I think I can put my hopes in Konoha one last time. Never give up. That's my nindo. Naruto walked through the bookshelf aisles, scanning the titles of novels featuring Naruto as the protagonist. Naruto pulled out a small black covered book and looked at the cover. Hey, Iruka-sensei, look, there's a book about us. Really? What's it called? Let's see, The Dolphin and the Fox, complete with lemony goodness. Let's see what it's about. Iruka's sweat dropped. Naruto, I don't think that's such a great idea. Ignoring the words of the scarred Chunin, Naruto opened the book and began to read. His look of eager anticipation quickly shifted into one of absolute horror and disgust. What the hell is this? Who the hell would write about? Naruto fainted. Back at Ichiraku's ramen stand, Ayame let loose a violent sneeze. Somebody was probably talking about her. I hope it was Naruto-kun. Naruto awoke to find himself in an unfamiliar bed. He rolled out of bed and checked his surroundings. It was a relatively nondescript room, with a single bed, nightstand, dresser and desk, but nothing personal to give a hint as to his location. He noticed a folded piece of paper on the desk, so he went over to it, picked it up and read its contents. Naruto, after you fainted, I took you home with me and put you in my guest bedroom. You were out cold, and I didn't want to leave you in the store. In any case, it was nice seeing you once again. I'm sorry I can't watch your match today, since we are in the middle of the academy exams, but you will do fine, I'm sure. You can tell me all about it tonight at Ichiraku's, my treat of course. Signed, Iruka. With a sigh, Naruto folded the note back up and placed it in his pouch. That was when he noticed that the clock on the nightstand read 9:55 a.m. Shit, 5 minutes until the test. Got to hurry. Naruto left Iruka's house in a blur and took off in the direction of the Chunin exam stadium. Inside the stadium, everybody was waiting in silence. Guy-sensei, It seems as if Naruto-kun's flames of youth have not been lit today. Lee, as protectors of the springtime of youth, it is our duty to rekindle Naruto's flames of youth. Yash. If I fail to do that, I will climb the Hokage monument with only my thumbs. And I will go with you as well. If I cannot do that, I shall walk to Suna on my hands backwards. Guy Sensei. Lee. Guy Sensei. Lee. Guy Sensei. Lee. Guy Sensei. Lee. Guy Sensei. Will you two just shut up already? Every day it's the same damn speech and flamboyant stupidity. Grow up for s sake. Everybody stared in shock and fear at the fuming Tenten, who had just displayed the power to stop the combined might of Lee and Guy. Lee and Guy started to cry. Lee, it appears our dear Tenten's youthfulness has faded away. A tick developed in Tenten's forehead. Yes, Guy Sensei, we must help Tenten rediscover her flames of youth. The tick grew larger. Lee. Neji nervously started to edge away. Guy Sensei. Tenten exploded. Okay, that's it. I'm going to remove your flames of youth myself if you don't shut the up right now, you understand me? She summoned a pair of katana out of nowhere and pointed them towards Lee and Guy's flames of youth to emphasize her point. Guy and Lee paled and sat down, crossing their legs and using their hands to protect their precious flames of youth. Tenten looked around and saw that everybody was staring at her. She flushed red in embarrassment but managed shouted out, "What the hell are you all staring at?" It was silent in the stadium as everybody continued to wait. Sorry I'm late, everybody. The crowd turned as one to meet the new arrival, who cast aside his hood and cloak to reveal himself to the observers. Naruto. Is that really you? His eyes are back. Good to see you again, dude. My, he's pretty hot. Tsunade's voice cut through the shouts and cries. Quiet. Okay, now that both opponents are here, I'd like to announce the return of Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Today, we will be assessing Naruto's skill level. His opponent will be the head of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hiashi. Hiashi stepped down onto the field to the shock of the spectators and stared at Naruto. Naruto, I trust that you will prove a formidable opponent for me. Naruto's eyes hardened, the warm blue shifting into frigid ice. I ask the same of you, Hiashi. Hiashi nearly took a step backwards. This was the very look that Minato wore before facing his enemies. Hiashi could easily perceive the determination underscoring the cold, calculating glare. There are no limits on jutsu, although killing blows are forbidden. The match will end once one side forfeits or is unable to continue. Ready, begin. Hiashi flashed through some hand seals. Test number 1, Genjutsu Hyuga Secret Technique, Death Viewing Jutsu. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Weren't the Hyuga supposed to specialize in the Gyuken? Meanwhile, the audience was having similar thoughts. Finally, Neji spoke up. So this is Hiashi-sama's true strength, incredible. The nearby shinobi turned to Neji for clarification. The Hyuga are best known for taijutsu. However, there are several techniques that are said to be so powerful and difficult to master that they have passed into legend. To think that Hiashi-sama has learned and mastered one is incredible. Unfortunately, I do not know what this particular jutsu does. Hinata, seated nearby, interjected. Father told me about this technique once. He said it was comparable to the final stage of the Sharingan. It forces the victim into an illusion in which his or her loved ones torture and maim the victim. What is father doing? The nervous crowd turned its attention back to the battle and was surprised to see Naruto standing, seemingly unaffected. Naruto smirked at a wide-eyed Hiashi. Too bad, Hiashi. Genjutsu doesn't affect me anymore. Impressive, your father was the only other person who could break free of my illusion. Nevertheless, it's over. Hiashi slid into a familiar stance, activating his Byakugan. You are within the range of my divination. He sprang forwards, striking Naruto in the chest. 2 hits, 4 hits, 8 hits, 16 hits, 32 hits, 64 hits, 128 hits. Naruto flew back into the wall, coughing up blood due to the 254 consecutive strikes. Hiashi bowed, deactivated his Byakugan and turned to Tsunade. The fight is over. I have sealed off all of his tenketsu. Tsunade did not say anything and instead stared at the spot that Naruto had flown with wide eyes. Hiashi turned around and saw Naruto standing in a battle stance, ready to fight and holding two blades. In his right hand, Naruto wielded a pure white zanbato. At the handle there was a black and white chain that was attached to a jet black wakizashi that Naruto held in his left. Hiashi reactivated his Byakugan and stared at Naruto before gasping in surprise. He was cut off as Naruto threw the wakizashi at Hiashi, who quickly activated his Kaden, deflecting the projectile. The chain retracted, returning the wakizashi to Naruto's hand. Naruto smirked as Hiashi gulped nervously. Naruto slashed upwards with the zanbato and a burst of white light shot forth from the zanbato. Angel technique. Judgment. Hiashi instinctively activated his Kaden, praying that his absolute defense could hold up to this mysterious attack. The resultant explosion rocked the stadium, and as the smoke started to dissipate, the crowd eagerly scanned the stadium for any activity. Finally the field came into sight, revealing a panting Naruto leaning on his zanbato and an unconscious Hiashi on the ground. Roars of approval coursed throughout the stadium. Tsunade walked up to the center of the stadium and proudly gave the verdict. Winner Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Up in the stadium, Hinata had her Byakugan activated and wore a look of absolute shock. Kiba noticed this. Hey, Hinata, what's the matter? Naruto-kun, yeah, he's awesome, we all know already. That's not it, Kiba-kun. Hanabi snorted and activated her own Byakugan to see what the problem was. Her eyes fell on Naruto and she gasped in surprise. Impossible. Now all the attention focused on the younger daughter of the Hyuga clan. Namikaze has massive chakra coils, but, no, it's impossible. Ino was running out of patience. But what? Spit it out already, not all of us have those precious eyes. Neji's next words sent chills through all that were listening. Naruto-sama does not have any chakra. Revelations. The shinobi around Neji were stunned. No chakra. What did that mean? Yash. Naruto-kun has found a way to overcome the inability to use chakra. Through hard work, his flames of youth burn brightly. Hinata spoke up, to the surprise of the group. Although her stutter had almost completely vanished since Naruto's execution, she was still a quiet and reserved girl. That's not quite right, Lee-san. You are simply unable to mold extra chakra beyond what your body naturally produces. You still have chakra running through your coils, which allows you to move around. Naruto-kun has no chakra at all. He shouldn't be able to move around, much less defeat father in a battle. They looked on as Naruto put his cloak and hood back on before slipping his two swords the folds of his cloak. Naruto turned to the crowd and grinned. I know you all probably have a bunch of questions for me. I will be at Tsunade's office in 3 hours to answer any questions that anybody may have for me. Until then, I have some business that I must attend to. With that, Naruto turned around and walked away with an attitude that left no room for rebuttal. 3 hours passed, and Tsunade sat in her office, waiting for the blonde to arrive. She looked over the assembled group in her office. The people were milling about and idly chatting, but the anticipation in the atmosphere was clearly evident. A knock was heard on the door, and the room instantly fell silent. All eyes focused on the group that entered the room. Team 7 led by Kakashi. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. An escort mission to Suna should take more than a day to complete. Hitaki, report. Yes, Hokage-sama. The escort turned out to be a spy for Sound, who attempted to capture Sasuke. We subdued the enemy and brought him to Ibiki for interrogation. Good job Hitaki, Team 7. Sakura spoke up. Hokage-sama, why is everybody gathered here? Is something happening? Tsunade smirked. Naruto might be upset, but it will definitely make things much more interesting. Yes, Haruno. Something is going to happen soon. Team 7, stay here for a while. Team 7 complied, and the group of shinobi continued to wait, this time in complete silence. Finally, the doors swung open once more, and Naruto casually walked into the office. Naruto. Naruto glanced at the pink-haired Kunoichi and went over to Tsunade's desk without a word. Finally, he turned around. I know that many of you have questions, so ask away. Hinata spoke first. To the surprise of many, how did you come back to life, Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled mysteriously, a gift from Kami. Shino raised his eyebrows, and your eyes? Naruto nodded, gift from Kami. Yosh, your flames of youth are brighter than ever. We must train together in order to raise our collective youths. Naruto grinned, and everybody held their breaths. Was Naruto going to join the infamous green beasts of Konoha? It's good to see you too, Lee. I'm afraid I have to decline, however, because my training schedule is fundamentally different from yours. We would be holding each other back. Instead, we can have a spar sometime. Lee nodded with flames in his eyes. Has he finally unlocked a dujutsu? The copy nin asked a question that had been on his mind for a while. What have you been up to over this past year? Naruto silently looked at Kakashi, empty blue eyes gazing into Kakashi's lone uncovered eye. Kakashi nervously shifted. Finally Naruto responded, training. A tick mark formed in Sakura's forehead, and the pinkett exploded in fury. Training. That's all you've been up to? Why the hell did you have to abandon Konoha and Team 7 if you just wanted to train, you stupid IDI? Sakura suddenly stopped when she locked eyes with Naruto. She felt a chill course through her body as Naruto's icy blue eyes seemed to peer into her very soul. At that moment, Sakura finally realized that the Naruto that she thought she knew didn't exist anymore. What have I done? The room was silent in the wake of Sakura's outburst for a while. Hiashi finally spoke up. Naruto, during our fight I noticed something unusual about your body. Naruto smiled at this, knowing where the question would lead. You saw that I have no chakra, right? While Hiashi nodded his head in confirmation, there were gasps of surprise from those who were not around Neji and Hinata during the earlier battle. PFT, Dobi. Most of the shinobi glared at the Uchiha, but Naruto simply ignored Sasuke before continuing on as if nothing had happened. It's true. I found out soon after I came back to life that I no longer possess any chakra of my own. Apparently, when Kyuubi was released from my body, the stupid fox burned away both of our chakra supplies. As it left, it managed to permanently ruin my chakra core, which prevents me from generating any chakra. Once I used up all of my chakra reserves, that was it. So how are you able to move around, much less fight without any chakra? I don't quite understand it myself, but somehow it works. Chakra is supposed to enhance movement, not initiate movement, so movement without chakra is possible, even if it's extremely difficult. On the plus side, jutsu and bloodlines that use the enemy's jutsu are completely useless against me. The Sharingan, which reads chakra flow, cannot copy anything and the Byakugan is completely blind to my presence. I used to suck at genjutsu, but now I'm immune. Tsunade gaped. That was intelligent and well thought out. Naruto smirked. Not having a bloodthirsty demon whispering in your ear, constantly trying to get you to go on a violent killing spree anymore did wonders for my reasoning capacity. Tsunade scraped her mouth off the floor. I see. Still, that doesn't explain that strange jutsu that you used during the match. Always the smart one, aren't you, Shikamaru? Then tell me, what are the basic chakra element types? TCH, how troublesome. Fire, water, wind, earth and lightning. That's right. During my training, I discovered some hidden elemental manipulation abilities. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. So, which elements can you control, or do you have control over multiple elements? Or can you control them all? None of them, actually. However, I can control two other elements, light and dark. Huh. Naruto lifted his right hand and after a moment of concentration, a pure white aura enveloped his hand. He then lifted his left hand, and it was quickly shrouded in darkness. What about your swords? I bet this new chakra of yours has something to do with it. Naruto looked over at an eager Tenten. He grinned and reached into his coat, pulling out two sword hilts. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed them over to Tenten, who had stars in her eyes as she inspected the hilts. So you channel this chakra into these sword hilts, which materializes the chakra into blades, right? And that chain too, right? Naruto nodded, and Tenten pouted. HMPH, that means that I can't try out these blades. That sucks. She returned the hilts, giving them final wistful look. Actually, pure elemental manipulation is different from chakra elemental manipulation, but that's a discussion for another day. Anyways, I think we should call it a day. Before he could leave, Tsunade called out to Naruto. Hey Naruto, catch. She threw a small object at the blonde, who caught it without looking. Naruto opened his hand and glanced at the golden key and a slip of paper with instructions before walking out with a faint smile on his face, followed closely by Team 7. With that, Tsunade turned to the remaining shinobi with a smirk. Well, we have to hurry and prepare for the party now. On his way out, Naruto heard a familiar voice drifting out. My, Naruto, is that the proper way to treat your teammates after all this time? You could at least say hi. Shit, not now. What do you want? I've got things to do, so hurry up and say what you want to say. Naruto, listen to us. What we did back then, we did what we thought was best for the team. Quote, we didn't want it to happen, Naruto. Quote, Naruto, please return to Team 7. Quote, damn it, say something Naruto. Is that all, Hatake? With that, Naruto started to walk away from a shocked Team 7 when a hand on his shoulder stopped him. Fight me, Naruto. Naruto turned and saw Sasuke glaring at him. Is the Tem checking me out? No thanks. Dobi. I said fight me, now. Sasuke activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and stared Naruto in the eye with an arrogant smirk. His smirk quickly turned into a horrified grimace as Naruto's icy blue eyes bored through Sasuke. Very well. Naruto raised a hand shrouded in shadow and thrust his hand in Sasuke's face. Devil technique. Vision of darkness. Sasuke stumbled backwards, clawing at his eyes and howling while Naruto walked away, hands in his pockets. Oi, Naruto, what did you do to Sasuke-kun? Ah, give it a rest Haruno. I used a jutsu that temporarily blinded Uchiha. He'll be fine tomorrow. With that, Naruto continued on his way, leaving a quiet Team 7 in his wake. Sai broke the uncomfortable silence. It appears that Naruto-kun has a bigger than Sasuke-chan. Naruto stood in front of his new house and took a deep breath, and narrowed his eyes. There were noises coming from within the house. He quickly unlocked the door and burst inside, kunai in hand. He was met with the sight of a frantic Tsunade barking orders at shinobi left and right. The shinobi were desperately hanging up various party decorations. What the hell is going on? Naruto's sweat dropped at the scene. Slightly red-faced, Tsunade explained, well, we were going to hold a welcome back party for you, but some of us got a bit distracted. Huh, Kiba shouted out from the bar, dude, Naruto, your place is awesome. I mean, some of the stuff is a bit outdated, but once you pimp this shit up, your house will be where it's at. Don't pay attention to Kiba. He can't hold his sake like a man. Why don't you just take a tour of your new house while we get things ready? As Naruto walked through his new home, he was impressed with the efficient elegance of the Namikaze household. There was a small training dojo that was clean with plenty of training equipment. Next to the dojo was a well-stocked armory. Naruto looked around the armory, lightly fingering the katana, kunai and shuriken neatly packed in their respective containers. His glance fell on a box marked, Hiroshin. Naruto walked over to the box and pulled out a three-pronged kunai. Hiroshin no jutsu, must have been one hell of a technique, father. With that thought, Naruto replaced the kunai and left the armory to continue his self-guided tour. He noticed the jutsu library and made a mental note to study some of the scrolls. Although he could no longer use normal shinobi jutsu, it couldn't hurt to understand the nature of the various techniques that he could encounter. Naruto passed by through the kitchen, office and bedroom with a smile on his face. Finally, he had his own home. He passed by a door marked Hot Springs, and his smile widened. He walked through the door, intent on checking out the onsen. He was so eager to see the onsen that he failed to notice the basket of clothes in the changing room containing a pink Chinese-styled shirt and blue pants. Whoa, it's awesome. Naruto's gaze swept over the hot spring with stars in his eyes. He loved his new house. It was clean, it had its own training dojo and armory, as well as a jutsu library and an onsen. Most of all, it felt like home, the place where his parents had lived and the place where he would have grown up. An indignant feminine voice broke through his musings. Hey, what are you doing here? Shit, what should I do? Hold on. Why the hell are you in my onsen? And who the hell are you? A figure stepped through the steam, and Naruto could clearly see Tenten's towel-clad figure. In spite of himself, Naruto couldn't help but stare at Tenten, her warm chocolate eyes, her cute button nose, her luscious red lips, her delicate neck leading straight down to her developed. Where the hell are you looking? Tenten summoned a kunai out of thin air and waved it threateningly in front of Naruto. Where the hell did she summon that kunai from? I didn't see any summoning scroll, and she doesn't have pockets or a pouch to hold that. Maybe. Naruto flushed red as he contemplated a possible storage unit for Tenten's kunai, and a tiny dribble of blood fell from his nose. Tenten noticed and narrowed her eyes dangerously, freezing Naruto in place. You stupid pervert. Naruto screamed in terror and bolted from the onsen faster than Lee with 5 of his gates open while Tenten looked on in surprise. Did he really think that I would attack him? The rest of his tour passed without much incident, and by then, Tsunade and the shinobi had finished preparing for the party, so Naruto headed over to join the group. His smile upon seeing everybody slightly faltered when he saw Kakashi, Sakura and Sai huddled together in a corner. Kakashi and Sakura were anxiously glancing at a brooding Sasuke. How did they get here? Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get this party started. With a cheer, the shinobi began to party. Naruto was about to head in the direction of the ramen stand set up by Tuki and Ayame, but a hand grabbed Naruto and forced him to the bar. Oi, brat, I've waited too long for this. You and I are having a drink now. Tsunade pulled out a bottle of sake and 2 saucers and began to pour the sake into the dishes. Hey, where's Ero Sennin at? I haven't seen him around. Tsunade finished pouring and sighed, placing the bottle on the counter before taking a sip of the sake. Jiraiya hasn't been doing too well recently. He took your execution pretty hard, and I think he regrets not being there for you when you were younger. He drowns himself in his work, barely spending any time in Konoha before heading out on another mission. Naruto took a sip of the sake before downing the rest of the sake in one gulp. I see, I guess I should talk to him when he gets back. Naruto pulled out another bottle of sake from the bar and started to drink directly from the bottle. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Been working on your tolerance recently? HMPH, I don't get drunk. Alcohol inhibits the flow of chakra to your vitals. Since I don't have any chakra, I don't need to worry about feeling the effects of alcohol. Well, at least the taste is good. Lucky bastard. Naruto left the bar to mingle with the others, leaving a jealous Tsunade slumped over at the bar. As Naruto walked away, he bumped into someone, sending her sprawling to the ground. Are you okay? The figure turned to face Naruto, bringing him face to face with a snarling Tenten. Gah, I'm so sorry, forgive me. I'm begging you. Tenten got to her feet and Naruto flinched, expecting the worst. Instead, Tenten merely spun on her heel and stalked away. Watch where you're going next time, baka. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. Oi, Naruto, come over here and join us for a bit. We're singing karaoke. Give it a try. Naruto looked over and saw Lee and Guy singing a surprisingly accurate rendition of Macho Man, while spectators cringed at the sight. I thought the village people were gay, but this is too much. He turned to walk away, but Kiba forcibly dragged Naruto to join the group. He was forced to sit through Shino singing, La Cucaracha, Ino singing, Like a Virgin and Neji singing classical Italian opera surprising well. He was about to sneak off and escape when a microphone was thrust into his arms and he was gently pushed towards the stage. Naruto sighed. Might as well sing and get this over with, then. Be for you, be for me. Ueda Yuji, Hori Yui, Kawadani Nitsuko, translation by Kaworu S. I'm aching for something. Because I just realized it. In a town where everyone rushes about. I tried walking a little slower. The wish I can't tell, I want to make it with you. Sometimes when I want to cry, I close my eyes and think try. But you're here, and I wish for love. At any time, I want your heart to be by my side. That's why I'm here, I'm looking for love. If we're together, we'll change tears into kindness. The dream will surely come true. Those around Naruto had the same thought running through their minds. Was Naruto always this talented? Indeed, his voice effortlessly conveyed his pain and loneliness to all those within hearing range. Where you were, what you were doing. I'm always thinking about you. I'm taking the blue sky of today to make the color of our commemoration. My voice won't say the prayer even though I want to be there. Even with broken hearts, people grow strong and oppressive. Why? You're here, and I wish for love. A miracle that will only go on for us. And I'm here, looking for love. From now on, together we start walking to the endless future. Tenten was idly milling about, somewhat bored when she heard Naruto's voice drift over from the karaoke machine. She stopped and listened, Naruto's soft dulcet tones penetrating deep into her core. Is this how you truly feel, Naruto? Forever, you'll be here wishing for love. The only one for me is you. I'm over there, looking for love. For an instant a depressing moment shines. Surely just for us. There was a silence as all of the women, as well as some of the men wiped tears from their eyes before the audience erupted in cheers. Hell, he sang it better than the original artists themselves did. Refusing to sing again, Naruto moved on, leaving Kiba to howl a rough rendition of Who Let the Dogs Out, while Akamaru whined and covered his ears with his paws. As time went along, the party became rowdier and rowdier, partly due to the sake flowing from the bar. After Anko had used her snakes to hold him in place while she and Kurenai gave him a double lap dance, Naruto decided to head out to get some fresh air. Tenten was nursing a saucer of sake while looking over the party. She was with her idol, Tsunade of the legendary Sannin, which would usually send Tenten into a squeal of fangirl frenzy, but seeing her idol shit-faced drunk put a damper on the excitement. She looked up and noticed Naruto walking out the door, unnoticed by the others. She downed her remaining saucer and decided to follow the blonde. Tenten followed Naruto to the training ground and saw Naruto pull out his hilts. She watched, transfixed as light and dark burst from the hilts before settling into the familiar Zanbato and Wakizashi. A black and white chain blurred into existence, connecting the two blades. Tenten resisted the urge to droll at the sight of the beautiful weaponry. She then watched as Naruto jumped around, swinging his sword with reckless abandon, destroying the training ground in the process. What incredible power, but still. Geez, your form sucks. Naruto spun around glaring at the bun-haired Kunoichi. What do you want? Did you come here just to insult me and make fun of me? Tenten started to back down, but she quickly bounced back. I was just going for a walk, and I happened to see you practicing. With the way you fight, I could beat you in 3 moves. Oh yeah, bring it. Naruto settled down into a fighting stance while Tenten pulled out 3 kunai. Naruto jumped forward, swinging at Naruto with the Zanbato. Tenten leapt into the air, hurling a kunai at Naruto, who blocked it with his Zanbato. 1. Naruto smirked. 3 moves. There was no way that could be possible. 2. Naruto's eyes widened as Tenten's second kunai caught the chain, pinning his weapon to the ground. TCH, good move, but it's not over yet. With a burst of light the kunai was blown from the chain, freeing his weapons. 3. Naruto gulped as he felt the cold steel of Tenten's remaining kunai resting against his neck. I give up. Tenten cheered while Naruto sighed. The two slumped down on the cool evening grass. I can't believe that I was beaten by a girl. Tenten's eyes flashed dangerously. What was that? Naruto nervously began to sweat. Nothing, I was just talking to myself, aha aha aha. Naruto put his hand behind his head and laughed in what he hoped was an innocent manner. Good, because I thought I heard you say something about women being weaker than men. Anyways, you said that there were flaws in my form, and you, well, kicked my to prove your point. So could you show me what I did wrong? Naruto, it would take a long time to fix your swordsmanship, and wielding two different blades makes things that much harder. I have specialized in weapons since my academy days, so learning how to use those blades wouldn't be too difficult for me, but you need to learn the basics in order to develop any proficiency, which could take years. Remember, the only reason you managed to beat Hiashi-sama with your blades was because you caught him by surprise. Naruto visibly drooped, which Tenten immediately picked up. She decided to soften up. Hey, tell you what. I'm free tomorrow, so if you meet me here tomorrow at 9 in the morning, I can show you some of the basics and get you started in terms of improving your swordsmanship. Really? Yeah, just make sure you're here on time and ready to train, or I'm going to make sure that you won't be a very happy person tomorrow. Naruto silently nodded. He didn't know what Tenten would do to him for being late, but he didn't want to find out, either. Naruto. Yeah, well, I was wondering, what's it like to die? Naruto stared at Tenten, his piercing blue eyes never breaking contact with Tenten's brown eyes. Tenten squirmed nervously. You know, they say that as shinobi, we must be emotionless on the battlefield, but death is something that we all think about when we're idle, not doing anything. Each time we go out on a mission, we know that it may be our last, but still, somebody has to do them. It's rather insensitive and selfish to be asking you, so if you don't want to say anything, I understand. Naruto continued to look at Tenten, this time with a rather curious eye. Finally, after what seemed an eternity to Tenten, Naruto spoke. Death is peaceful. It's a feeling that you belong, that nothing can hurt you. The afterlife is a nice place, it's a place I can spend an eternity in. Oh, thank you. After a moment of silence, Tenten stood up. Well, you can stay here longer if you want. I think it's time for me to head back to the others. With that, she walked off into the distance as Naruto's eyes followed her, subconsciously drifting down to watch her swaying hips and her shapely. Don't you dare stare at my you stupid hentai. Damn. Naruto whirled around, red-faced at nearly being caught. It wouldn't be a good thing if Tenten beat him to death before he could face Kyuubi. She's scarier than Tsunade Bachan, but she has a kinder side as well.